Hello, my name's Ben,
And my name's Josh.
and welcome back to FPL Graduates, and welcome back to another team reveal video. We're heading into Game Week 17. We're heading into the festive period of FPL, one of the best periods of the season for points gained on your mini league rivals. Without further ado, let's get straight into what Josh is doing this week.
Okay then, so yeah, off the back of a minor red arrow last week, obviously I took the -4 hit to facilitate Mo Salah coming back in. It weren't the best game week. I just don't think anyone really had a great game week unless you sort of went rogue with the captaincy or a little bit differential. So yeah, for me it weren't the best, but we look to improve on that. I think structurally now I feel pretty happy with my team for like the future game weeks anyway, so hopefully we can start climbing those ranks because it's been a pretty bad season so far. In goal, David Raya obviously got that Arsenal clean sheet. It's a 6-point ceiling, to be quite honest. I don't think we see him getting much more than that right now, unless we're really lucky and get ourselves a save point. For me, if I was choosing fresh, I think I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, I'd probably be going with like a Timber and a Gabriel rather than going with Raya now. But hey, he's there. He gets the Arsenal clean sheets. He's the coverage that I need, and he never will be dropped, which is, the reliability is always nice to have. In the defence, we've also got Rico Lewis. He's this week. I would ideally not like to play him, but it's sort of having to choose him. I think the attacking threat is probably going to be there a little bit more. We saw it against Crystal Palace. Obviously, he picked up the goal before obviously getting suspended. Villa away. I'm not sure how that game's going to go. It's going to be an interesting one. It's an early kickoff as well. Both sides, I'd say, struggling at the moment. Obviously, City more than Villa, but it'll be an interesting game, that's for certain. I've already brought in Anthony Robinson this week. He came in for Ait Nuri before the price rise, I think on Sunday night, which is very unlike me to move early, but he weren't playing midweek, so I thought it was pretty safe. In terms of Anthony Robinson anyway, he plays like all the minutes for Fulham pretty much, so yeah, he's very nailed, very safe, similar to my Colwill transfer last week. I'm trying to get some guys at the back who are reliable for minutes. I can play them every week. I'm not going to have to worry about rotation. That's not something I could say about my defence in previous weeks, which is nice to have now. So Southampton at home for Robinson is nice. Equally, Everton away for Colwill is also nice. Everton don't score many goals at all, so I'll be hoping for a clean sheet there after obviously Chelsea conceded really late on against Brentford last week. Ben, what's the thoughts on that defence?
Yeah, like it's getting there with the fence. Like we saw it in previous weeks, and we mentioned it sort of over the last maybe 3-4 game weeks that was the weak point of your team, and it's a case that you have to address it whilst putting out other fires within your team going forwards, which is the important part of it with FPL, because the ceiling is with the midfielders and forwards. So yeah, I think it's getting there. It's like 3 of the 4 is like it's a decent return. You're probably looking at a double up of maybe the Arsenal defence going into the next few game weeks. I think that's probably going to be the strategy for you going forwards. But yeah, Robinson is a good move, I'd say, especially with the fixture run we've got coming up with Fulham. Let's hope that we don't have the same sort of conversations that we had about Ait Nuri with his good fixtures and his poor form. Let's see if Robinson can do a little bit better. And, Robinson as an asset looks a lot better than Ait Nuri in terms of the output. So, yeah, all in all, a fairly strong defence.
Okay then, so moving on to the midfield where most of my money is spent. We've obviously got Cole Palmer, Saka and Salah. I won't talk about them too much just because everyone has them pretty much at this stage. Captaincy this week for me will be going on Salah over Palmer. Tottenham defensively are one of I think they're ranked 18th or 17th for expected goals conceded since game week 10, and the reason I say game week 10 is because that was the first game that Van der Ven was not available for them, so he's a big miss for them, which everyone knows. Obviously no Romero as well, he's definitely going to be out for this weekend's game, so we're going to see Dragusin, Archie Gray, maybe no even a Doji. He's a potential doubt for their Carabao Cup game on Thursday, so a really poor back line for Spurs. You could just see Cole Palmer getting a hat-trick now and Salah getting like a goal or something like that. It's just bound to happen, which is funny. But yeah, Bruno Fernandes, the only other guy in the midfield to talk about. He's the second top point scorer in FPL since game week 10 as well, since Ten Hag left. For me, just super reliable. Like, he just seems to pick up points Like the derby, he's not done much at all in that game, but he's on penalties, scores penalties, reliable from the spot. He's going to play every minute pretty much. And yeah, like I mentioned in our transfer targets video, he should be playing further forward in that attacking role next to Ahmad, as obviously Mason Mount has picked up an injury. So yeah, should look good for this week. Bournemouth at home. It's a really nice fixture, I think, for United. Back at home, Amarin's been pretty decent at home so far this season. Obviously, Forest defeat was not ideal, but I think United hopefully have turned a corner since that game, and obviously that derby win should hopefully boost the confidence in the camp. What's the thoughts on the midfield, Ben?
Yeah, fair bit of minute security, which I think is key over sort of these upcoming game weeks, and completely agree with you with the Salah pick. Obviously, we're recording this before the Spurs game takes place, and yeah, to be honest, that midweek game, they could pick up another injury, and they're going to have to play the centre-backs that are going to be playing on Sunday against Liverpool, because they haven't really got anyone else that they can put out for this game. So there's going to be an element of fatigue as well for these Spurs players, which I think Liverpool can really capitalise on, and especially a fully well-rested Mo Salah as well. Yeah, I think all of the picks are very solid in terms of minute security and penalties for all of these guys. So yeah, all in all, very good.
Okay then, so moving on to the forward line. Started off with Chris Wood, obviously brought him in last week as part of the hit. The disallowed goal, super frustrating from an owner's point of view, but you just have to take them on the chin. Brentford away this week. Brentford conceded so many goals, so I'm hoping for a return there. Obviously Chris Wood is on penalties as well, which is lovely. Isak, probably the shining light of the team at the moment. He's been super consistent since I brought him in. Sort of kept him over that injury spell before that Liverpool game, and he's really rewarded me for that with some big returns. Ipswich away this week. I don't think it's an easy game by any means. I think Ipswich away is actually probably the toughest newly promoted game right now. Ipswich have improved quite sufficiently in the defence since about game week 10. They're around 15th, 14th for expected goals conceded in the league, which, for a newly promoted team is pretty solid. It's significantly better than the likes of Southampton and Leicester anyway. So yeah, no pushovers at the moment by any means. João Pedro's up last, obviously a bit disappointing for owners at the moment, only the one assist in the last, I think, 4 weeks. He's not someone I'm looking to ship on though. Like, he's one of those guys who will just turn it on any given week. He's got the penalties. He's fairly secure for minutes. I don't see him getting dropped anytime soon, touch wood. So yeah, hopefully he can get some more returns. I think West Ham away is a nice fixture as well for Brighton. Obviously they coming off a really bad defeat to Crystal Palace. They're going to want to turn that around pretty swiftly. So hopefully João Pedro is in and amongst that. What's the thoughts on the front three, Ben?
Yeah, fairly solid front three, and 2 of the 3 have been fairly consistent over the last few weeks, which is really good. Obviously, Alexander Isak's been phenomenal. Chris Wood's been sort of steady, keeping ticking along, and I agree with your sentiment on João Pedro. I think that he's going to come good eventually, and it's just a case of patience for managers. So yeah, like I said, West Ham's not a bad fixture to have, and obviously there's a bit of security there on the bench with Morgan Rogers as well, just in case you need it, which you've not had too much security on that bench over the last few weeks, so hopefully that can sort of help you just in case there's unexpected rotation. Okay, so moving on into my team, we're off the back of a 67-point game week on the Game Week 16 wildcard, which is not too bad at all. Could have been a little bit better, I guess, but can't complain too much. Going into defence, we've got the double Arsenal defence, Timber and Raya. Of course, both started in midweek. I'm fairly hopeful that they'll both start again. Let's hope that they can keep a clean sheet. Crystal Palace away is a little bit of a difficult fixture, but we'll just have to roll with it. It's not too bad a position to be in. Colwill and Lewis Hall, of course, sort of the two, and the other 2 picks on the wild card. Colwill was on my bench last week, and I think I got away with it a little bit with them losing their clean sheet sort of fairly late on. But Lewis Hall was fantastic, and the sort of eye test almost sort of backed up my point on just sort of keeping him on the wild card and just keeping him in the team. Ipswich away is not a bad fixture, although I do think Newcastle will concede because Ipswich do tend to score at home. So let's just wait and see with that. Josh, what are the thoughts on the defence?
Yeah, really solid. Obviously, double Arsenal defence is probably the prime position to be in with their fixtures at the moment. They're looking decent defensively. Obviously, got the clean sheet against Everton last week. Crystal Palace this week. It'll be an interesting one. Obviously, they just conceded 2 to them in midweek, but with a massively rotated side, so I wouldn't pay too much attention to that. It'll be interesting to see how they do though, because away from home, obviously, it's a much sterner test than at home. Colwill, I think, is just a solid, safe pick. Obviously, I've got him myself. Everton, like I said, in my team, they don't score too many goals, so we should be hoping for a clean sheet there. And then, Lewis Hall, it's been fantastic, really. Even before the Hall, last weekend, he's looked dangerous, looked like he's going to get those attacking returns. It just happens that they come all in 1 week, which is fantastic for owners, and it's really nice just to see those big double-digit hauls in that defence.
Okay, so moving on into the midfield, and it's a fairly similar story in terms of my midfield compared to Josh's. I've also got Salah on the captaincy for the exact same reasons that Josh mentioned. It's just too good of a sort of opportunity to turn down, and I think a lot of managers will see that as well. A few managers will captain Cole Palmer. He will be hovering around the 100 to 110% EO range again this week, so there's not too many gains to be made out of him. Morgan Rogers is the guy that I've selected in my starting 11 this week. City's defensive record hasn't been great, and I do think Villa will score against them. Like Josh said, I don't know what the outcome will be, but I do think it's going to be a really attacking game. Both teams just got to win at the moment because they're not in the greatest of form either. And then Bukayo Saka is an interesting one because he hasn't done too much since he had that back-to-back double-digit haul. And Arsenal have really struggled to create from open play, and they've only really been scoring from set pieces. So I may consider sort of transferring him out in the next couple of game weeks. I'm not planning on using any free transfers, and it's sort of going into game week 18 with free transfers to maybe sort of play around with the premiums just a little bit. Josh, that's the midfield. What are the thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with Bukayo Saka. I think he's had 5 blanks in the last 7. So yeah, usually Mr. Consistent hasn't really been too consistent, and usually you don't sort of expect Saka to be explosive. And he has been in those 2 weeks that he has returned, so a little bit opposite to what we expect from him. But I think the fixtures now, they are turning. They've got quite a couple of good ones. I think it's Palace away, Ipswich as well. They're fixtures that I probably wouldn't send them for just yet, but definitely on the chopping block at the moment, I'd say, especially at that price tag of like 10.5 million. You can do a lot with that at the moment when you've got the likes of Bruno, Jackson, Isak, all so consistent at the moment, and obviously you can save yourself a couple of million whilst you're there. So yeah, I quite like the idea of probably getting rid of him soon, probably not just yet. Morgan Rogers is the interesting one. Obviously, I do agree, City's defence has been awful, to put it politely. It's just whether they try and shore that up. I think Kovacic coming back should be a massive plus for them. He's going to be a lot better. Obviously, when he was back, they were playing relatively better than what they were now. So yeah, hopefully that does help them. Obviously, Rico Lewis does return as well compared to that team at the derby. So there should be some better options. And let's be honest, until the 88th minute, City were cruising in that derby. They just sort of threw it away right at the end. So yeah, I think going forwards, I see both of these sides, City and Villa, improving.
Okay, so moving on to the strike force and the bench, we've got Alexander Isak, Nicholas Jackson and João Pedro. Alexander Isak, really happy to bring him back in on the wildcard. Do a bit of a hokey cokey with him, bringing him in and out of the team, but he is in for now, and he is very consistent. The same can be said for Nicholas Jackson. Both are getting lots of chances, both are getting lots of XG accumulation, and both getting lots of goals. João Pedro is one that, I'm thinking of holding as well, just because he is going to come good. It's just a little bit of a patience game with him. So let's see if he can produce some returns. Of course, the benching dilemma is Semenyo, because he sort of picked up that, not injury, it was a precautionary measure that he came off, but we'll wait and see on the team news with that. But Man United away, it looks to be a little bit more of a difficult fixture, especially with Semenyo not really performing to the standards that we saw at the start of the season. Joe Gomez on the bench as well, because I do believe Spurs will score against Liverpool. So Josh, that's the overall team, that's the strategy, that's the plan, that's the benching sort of dilemmas that we've got. What the overall thoughts?
Yeah, I like Jackson. He's obviously the only one sort of different from my front three. I think if I could, I probably would have him over Chris Wood at the moment. I think he's been banging form. Everton away this week's a lovely fixture as well. João Pedro, I just don't think you can get better for the same price tag. Like 5.5 million, when you're around that price tag, there's not much to choose from. So yeah, I'd always take a penalty taker, which a lot of those guys probably aren't, to be honest, when you look down at that sort of price tag. I agree with your benching decision. I think Semenyo is the one to bench this week. The fact that he got taken off early, I still think is a risk to minutes, at the weekend. If he's got something there, even if it's not a real injury. I still don't think they will risk him, 90 minutes into that game. So I think you've picked the right player there. And also, I think, like you mentioned, he's not really been that same player since the start of the season. Obviously, he had the suspension, has come back, and I just don't think he's sort of hit the heights. He has a lot of shots, and obviously we saw him hit the post against West Ham, but for me, the high quality chances just aren't quite there with him at the moment. Okay, then so that wraps up our Game Week 17 team reveals. Let us know what you think of our teams in the comments, and let us know your ranks as well. I'm sure you're probably doing better than me, but if you're doing better than Ben, do let him know in the comments.
Yeah, please do. And as always, remember to like, comment and subscribe to the FPL Graduates. I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
next time. Have a good game week, everyone.
So you may rise, but you'll never make me want